here by one of my favorite people, Nathan Chappell. Funny story. I'm sure you've probably forgotten this, Nathan, but when we first met, I had no idea who you were. And it was really humiliating because I was like, hey, what's your name? You're like, I'm Nathan Chappell. And I was like, I can't believe I just said that. So
I
Nathan
do.
Chappell, I know who you are. Welcome
How
to
could I
the
forget that? No, I have not. That was that was actually pretty funny though, because we had. I
that
mean, for
was oh
context, it's
man.
not that I think I'm anything, but we had met and communicated online, right? And
Yes,
so it was
multiple
just at
times.
this little dinner thing, and you're like, "Yeah, who are
Yeah.
you?" And then I'm like, "Yeah," because I came up to you like purposely, like walked across the place to be like, "Hey, Tim, I'm Nathan," and you're like, "Who?" So
It was, yeah, I have some witnesses who I think you will not be surprised to hear this. I've been doing some light mockery of them, and so they had an unlimited amount of ammo after that for the rest of the day and used it
all
uh
good. Yeah, good
unsparingly.
times.
Yes.
Good times.
Anyway, welcome. I don't think at that time we knew how much we would be hanging out together, but it has been great to be on this AI journey with you. I feel like you
Great.
really launched this for me and so many others. Can you give us just a bit of background? How did you see this coming? When did you see it? Like when we were talking about blockchain, you were like, "Come on, guys, it's AI.
Yeah.
Let's do this over here."
I mean, honestly, I'm a technologist by, kind of by default. I'm an entrepreneur. I started and sold two tech companies that were way ahead of their time back in the day. So like way ahead, like before digital storage, created a digital storage company and essentially learned websites before, dot coms were really big. So for me, it wasn't like a natural thing. I think I'm just easily influenced. I think I'm gullible and easily influenced around sci-fi. And so like I literally I mean, the whole reason I was going skiing and I was flying to Vail and read an article about the internet. And I was like, well, that's cool. Why doesn't someone sell skis on the internet? So that's what I did when I came home from my ski trip, started a company and do that. So, I mean,
To
early,
Australia. Like, I'm sorry,
yeah,
but
sure,
you've got to
right.
throw in Australia. At first, I thought you meant Austria,
No,
and then I was like,
our
no,
first
they're actually
order. And then that
crazy.
was like, oh, this internet's real. Like I literally, we spent $200,000 build a website to sell skis on the internet, and our first order came in like the next day from Australia, and we're like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. So it wasn't a far stretch. Working in the nonprofit sector, looking at predictive modeling, building predictive models, hiring companies to build predictive models for years and years and years on this like crazy hamster wheel. When I was reading about AI, probably in the 2015s, area, I was like, there's got to be a better way. And then by, I think, 2017, 2018, just got so frustrated. And then, definitely 2019 is what launched my exploration. And of course, since then, AI, by definition, essentially gets better, right? It's not a static
Yep.
technology, it just gets better. So once you're on the gravy train, you begin to have a clearer picture of like where things are going. And, to be honest, that part's harder than it's ever been because we're not talking about like, people training AI or even a few AIs training AIs, but like this exponential, like thousands of AIs training the next edition, versions of AI. So it's getting harder and harder to predict where things will happen because the pace of is accelerating so quickly.
I've tried to explain to people how, because I've been working in technology since 2008,
Yeah.
and I've tried to explain to people just how fast it's changing, and like, there's no way to describe it. The ground literally underneath of you changes every week. It's a different, you're looking at different
Yeah.
issues, like just
And that
so
it's so
incredibly
exciting,
fast.
right? I mean, you're a
Yeah,
technologist and you're an entrepreneur. If you like change, this is the most exciting time in human history to be alive.
yeah,
Like I always like my favorite time period to study was the Industrial Revolution because it was just a time of pure raw invention and ingenuity. This is like that amplified like 50,
yeah.
100,000x. Like, I mean, where, we have data scientists that are writing fiction novels and we have people like Mallory Erickson, doing, all kinds of crazy, like writing code. And so it's just anything is possible. And that's so exciting. I mean, we use the word so lightly, but this is truly like this inflection point in our sector, right? Because what was not possible is now entirely possible. What was philosophical is no longer philosophical. So
Yep.
we're both armed with like this technology that can absolutely do amazing things and amplify mission and impact at like scale because humans are great, but we're not very scalable on our own. But we're also confronted with and presented with, big philosophical questions, like just because we can do some things doesn't mean we should. And
Agreed.
so
Mhm.
it's just a cool balance. I think it's a really kind of fun time to be alive, where we both have this technology and we have to use our brain to think about the technology at the same time. And I'm fully prepared for that. And I feel like there's just so much that we need to learn and grow together in the space.
I'm glad that you are giving, so you're giving two talks at the upcoming summit. One of those is about a new book just coming out. The other is about the ethics of AI. Would love to hear you talk about, each of those and what people will get out of those sessions.
Yeah, so this book is a little different than my first, where the first was a bit more, not philosophical, but it was a picture of like what happens if all the funding dries up, which by the way, like all the funding just dried up. So, I
Mhm.
mean, I didn't obviously know that at the time, but there was some sort of, this feeling that we were over reliant on certain funding sources and that we had to make sure that generosity became democratized or remains democratized. And I feel the same way is true with AI. Like we're again presented at this special moment where the need for innovation's never been greater ever. Like that we absolutely the headwinds against charitable giving are very, very strong in light of like, recent, federal freezes and just any of that, not to be political, but at the same time, like the need for nonprofit services has never been greater, but we also are armed with tools that we've never had before that can, if used well, could be used to in very responsible and beneficial ways to draw connection and to amplify impact. And so, yeah, the first talk is about our book, and the book is called Nonprofit AI. Not surprising, like we've no guessing what it's about, like nonprofit AI. But it's a comprehensive guide. Essentially, it's a how-to, and it's using it not just for fundraising, but using AI for program development, program evaluation, HR appropriately, fundraising appropriately, and so on. So it truly is like a book that you would buy and kind of go through. All not you would not be surprised, but all based in the fundraising.ai responsible beneficial framework. So anything that we do, and the case studies we share are case studies that are, ideally built to do net good and not harm, and to avoid unintended consequences. So it's a very pragmatic approach. So Scott Rosenkrantz and I we're co-authors on this book, and we're gonna talk about some of those, really fun use cases during the summit. So that's gonna be fun. Then the second one, as you said, it kind of speaks for itself. It's the ethics of AI, balancing innovation with responsibility. And if I didn't really have to earn an income, I'd probably like, run a think tank that really wrestled with these big philosophical questions and how do we address it. So that's a topic I absolutely love. And I probably have, actually, I've never been bored in one of those conversations. I mean, I think there's just such a disparate and such a nuanced views on what ethics are in AI and ethics according to who, and how does the nonprofit sector need, or does it need to look different than the private sector and the same that uses the same technology. So that one for sure. And I know it's a panel conversation with some really incredible people. And so super excited about that because it's going to be a ton of fun.
Yeah, I am glad that you're taking that on. I remember some of the earliest meetings with fundraising AI. One of my big concerns was that we would be so focused on the harm potentials of
Mhm.
AI that we would get distracted and not look equivalently at the beneficial uses of AI. And I feel like I should have known, even knowing you for 2 minutes and not recognizing you even, I should have known that that is exactly where you think the most. What can we do best with this? And at the same time, you don't lose. I've never heard you lose the thread on, hey, we need to be responsible about this.
I'm super bullish on the opportunity for AI to drive impact. I mean, I am, but any conversation that you have on ethics and responsibility and beneficiality of AI honestly gets down to how much faith do you have in the human race. It has really nothing to do with anything else other than, for every one good use case for an AI, there are people that would use it. Lots of people that use it for negative things. So I think for me, it becomes more of a calling and one that we don't know the answers to, right? Like I think we have to wake up every day with this burden to do good, to use the technology that we have into the best extent that we can, and then learn from each other along the way and continue. Like there is no playbook. We're going to continue to write the playbook. Of course, we know how to like mitigate bias and some of those basic things that we used to talk about back in like 2017, building machine learning algorithms. We're way beyond that. We're way beyond bias and privacy and security. We're talking about like technology that can do net good or net harm, and how do you understand and then evaluate ongoingly, like on an ongoing, like almost everyday pace, what those technologies are doing, and then make, sometimes I think collectively make hard decisions to say, you know what, this is really cool, but maybe we shouldn't do it.
Yeah, I feel like it's becoming clear that the velocity of feedback is going to become one of the most important elements in all of this. Like
Yeah,
how do you constantly be evaluating at scale, because it's going to move too fast if we don't
exactly.
learn to evaluate that at scale. So I think that that's an interesting, I don't know, I
Yeah,
think that's an interesting future. Yeah.
I agreed. And I think conversations like this, and as many as we can have, whether you agree or disagree, not the point. It's that you're willing to have the conversation. I way more afraid of apathy in this space than I am in even irresponsibility. I mean, because irresponsibility, you can actually, have conversations and course correct. But apathy, where frankly is, I think, our greatest enemy, is that people just don't care. And then essentially leave it to others to determine what is appropriate
Yeah.
and not appropriate.
Yeah. Leaving it to others is increasingly meaning leaving it to AI.
Right. Well, right. For sure.
Right.
Not even
Yeah.
others, right? I mean,
Yeah.
right. Not even
Exactly.
others, but just
Yeah.
other AI. So yeah, no, good point.
Last thing before we sign off here, an idea that I've been thinking about lately is how important technologists know interoperability between systems is. And so, for a while there was this get big platform so that you don't have to worry about interoperability. And then it turned out that platforms weren't interoperable within themselves,
Right.
which is a whole other can of worms. But I've been thinking, as I do, because I talk about the human stack so much, about the way that conversations are human interoperability and the necessary and importantness of having more conversations about this and
Mhm.
increased engagement. In the same way that interoperability is important for machine learning, it's also important for human learning.
I agree. I'd say now more than ever, right? This is the time. I mean, this is the time of pure invention, and like anywhere we started, where all the rules of business have changed. What things were not possible are entirely possible, and I think relying on essentially what is essentially human, and that ability to connect and learn from each other, I think is so important.
All right, last word here. What are two reasons that you would recommend people come to the Nonprofit Marketing Summit next week?
Yeah, I mean, NMS is always just one of those favorite conferences that you go to that pulls together amazing thought leaders. So, I mean, I think it's just that whole thing. Like they spend so much effort to just, like literally it's an action-packed opportunity to like go deep in so many different areas. And so, I mean, yeah, I think it's great. I always love being part of it just because I can learn from others to jump in and be able to connect and see, and it's even interesting like a year later, like what are we talking about? And how is that different?
Yep.
I mean, things I talk about this year are very different than the things I was talking about a year ago. So I think it's yeah, it's one of those things that absolutely people don't want to miss. There's the QR code, sign up now. They get to hear a lot more from you. All good stuff.
And if you're not following Nathan, up in the corner is the QR code to follow him. Nathan is an amazing online presence in multiple platforms, especially LinkedIn, and maybe coming to a city near you because he is always on tour. So,
Yeah.
Nathan, thanks so much for your time.
Awesome, Tim. Thanks for having me. See you soon.